Hello friends, Brother Lawrence here, and today I would like to ask you a question. Will you, as a Seventh-day Adventist, recommend Charlie Kirk's book that promotes the Sabbath? As a Seventh-day Adventist, will you recommend that book? Let me know your answer right in the comments. Yesterday, Friday, Pastor Batchelor made a video talking about Charlie Kirk's book, and he answered many questions that people had about the book, and Pastor Batchelor did so well. But in the video, friends, Pastor Batchelor actually recommended Charlie Kirk's book.
These questions
let's take
questions
a
are
couple more.
piling up, but this one is one of the popular ones, which probably should ask this at the end, but do you think this book could usher in Sunday law?
Well, that's an interesting question. Let me go to the end of the book, if I could. And by the way, I would recommend the book because I think that it does exalt a biblical principle. I would recommend the book because I think that it does exalt a biblical principle that is good, and there's a blessing in that. Even for people who may not understand all the laws and all the teachings, every teaching of truth you embrace, there's a blessing connected with it. In chapter 13, in his conclusion, this kind of jumped out at me, and this is page 259. Now imagine if America began to honor the Sabbath again. Well, that got my attention. He's appealing to the country. Imagine if America began to honor the Sabbath again, not merely as a personal spiritual practice, but as a national cultural rhythm. So calling for a national cultural rhythm, he's saying it should be part of the natural cultural. Well, that goes back to the times of Puritans, where they basically had these blue laws that said that you could be imprisoned if you didn't keep it. It was part of the cultural rhythm. Now, I don't think we're at that point now.
But the blue laws still exist.
Well, what's going to happen is, I'm almost certain, there are going to be more people attending worship services weekly as a result of his book. More Sunday keepers are going to be showing up Sunday saying it is the Sabbath. They may be unplugging their phones and they may stop shopping. But I don't see from his book anybody switching from Saturday or from Sunday to Saturday. So let me finish reading this because I'm answering that question. And then you go to the next page. I'm jumping down a paragraph. And this is page 260 in Charlie's book. The entire week would once again be centered around the holy, the divine, the beautiful, the sacred. Our nation would regain a core moral, spiritual center. But he says, picture Saturday or Sunday. He specifically says, it doesn't matter what day. And that was on 259. Going now to 261. And slowly the soul of our nation. So as you read the conclusion, it's an appeal for a national revival in Sabbath keeping, but he basically says a seventh day,
Right.
not the seventh day. Now I admire that he picked the seventh day because he said it's biblical, but I think he could have gone a little farther. Charlie Kirk was not afraid to ruffle feathers.
That's right.
Okay, he spoke up against cultural norms, but I wish he'd gone a little further and just did a shout out to Sunday keeping Christians and said, bless your heart, I believe you love the Lord, but God doesn't say keep the first day, he says keep the seventh day.
Well, this leads to the next question, but today when I was, before we played racquetball, I went and got my car aligned, and the guy that was doing the alignment, we started talking about Charlie Kirk and things, and he says, at his church, after Charlie Kirk was assassinated or killed, he said church attendance jumped 30%. So this leads to the question,
Okay.
Does Kirk's presenting the Sabbath as keeping a commandment of God, or is it more of, no, sorry, it wasn't that question. Why do many traditions observe Sunday instead of Saturday, and how do you think this new book will change the view, or will it?
Yeah. I don't think the new book's going to do a lot to change people from Sunday keeping the first day to the seventh day. That's why we're doing this program. We're saying this book is great in drawing attention to the Sabbath truth. It needed to go one more step and say the seventh day. Now, Charlie says the seventh day, but then he seems to open it up and say a seventh day. But he admits that God says the seventh day. Now, notice it's not just about the blessings to you. In the command, it says that God rested that day, God blessed that day, and God made it the seventh day holy. So 3 times it says in Genesis chapter 2, the seventh day, the seventh day, the seventh day. He blessed it, he rested, he made it holy. God says, I've picked a particular day, and I'm commanding you to remember the day I picked, not a day.
Okay.
And that's the difference. So if people are going to be coming together for worship, does everybody get to say, well, my Sabbath's going to be Tuesday, and we're all going to gather that day? By the way, Hebrews 10:24, let us not forsake the assembling of ourselves together. That's part of it. Another question?
So the question then, when you're talking about the day versus a day, what makes the specific day we observe so important? Does prophecy say anything about this?
Yeah, I think that there's going to be a command in the last days to worship the image of the beast. The Bible tells us that in the days of Daniel chapter 3, there was a government law that everybody needed to break the second commandment and worship a big golden idol that Nebuchadnezzar set up. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego needed to decide, are we going to obey the commandment of God or the government law? Whoever bowed down and did not worship, whoever did not bow down and worship, they were going to be killed. Now that harkens to Revelation 13. Then you get to Daniel 6. The government, which is now Persia, makes a law that everybody needs to pray to the king for 30 days. That breaks the first commandment. Daniel wouldn't do it. He went to the lion's den, and he was delivered. Both Daniel 6, Daniel chapter 3, they're delivered by the Lord. And the angel of the Lord comes, and Jesus comes. In the last days, the devil's going to go through the 10 commandments. He's going to take the fourth commandment and say, everybody's got to, he's very sneaky this time. He says, you got to worship. You can worship God, but not the seventh day. Do it the first day. See how subtle that is?
It's very subtle. So speaking of the subtlety, another question that pops up, ties into this is, do you think, because the book came out after Charlie died.
Right.
So the question is, do you think that the book was manipulated or edited before its release? Because there are some things like in parentheses.
Yeah. Well, I would say absolutely. I'm an author, and I've sent books off to publishers, and they have a lot of freedom in the editing process. And you can be sure that the editors have been through the book, and they may have taken, Charlie may have had some things in there that were spoken more strongly, that were softened, or they may have beefed up other things that he said differently. The editors do make changes. I just know that for a fact. And as I was reading the book, it almost looked to me like the book went through an AI program that added adjectives and beautified the language. I just kept seeing a lot of beautiful adjectives that when I listened to Charlie Kirk speak on his YouTubes, not all those words were in the vocabulary that I'm finding in the book.
Flowery.
Yeah, just so there's, the editor may have done that, and editors are using AI now, so I'm sure that there's some editing, but the book is well written.
Yeah.
And it's very impactful about the importance of keeping the Sabbath, but those 2 points I wish had been clear.
This one brings up a very interesting point. Why are you even discussing about Charlie Kirk, what he believed? Because there were a lot of great men that believed different things. Why him?
Well, I'm saying I think it's important because, first of all, it's a bestseller, which means it's affecting the national conversation right now. That he filled the headlines both with some of the controversial things that he said, and then his assassination and his funeral filled the headlines. It was nonstop, wall-to-wall coverage. So he became a national, and you could even say an international personality. Regardless of his political views, we're not here advocating for or against his political views. I'm just saying this very visible person wrote a book on that subject, and that book became, it was his last act. The last thing he wrote is about resting. It almost seemed as though the devil was involved in cutting him down before he could have taken it to the next step.
That's true. Someone's asking here, do you believe his wife follows and believes in the Sabbath as well?
Oh, she says she does. Erica is on tape saying that, she counted it as family time, a seventh day. It was a family day. They'd turn off their phones. I don't know if they both kept it the same way. They come from different religious persuasions. But yeah, she's out promoting the book right now.
That's true.
Yeah.
Another person is asking why we are aware of the Protestant America is a false prophet. Why is Charlie Kirk's exposure of the Sabbath means so much to Seventh-day Adventists and allows to mix our belief in with this?
Well, what I think is it becomes a great opportunity when people begin talking about the Sabbath truth, even if they may not have everything right. Boy, it makes it so easy to pick up the discussion. And I was sad, Pastor Alden, as I read the book, you're reading a man's book, and I should add, he did a program in Arizona, and I was invited to speak at the program where he talked about the Sabbath.
All right, friends, that was Pastor Doug Batchelor. But some Adventists believe that there are some errors in the book, so they are not going to recommend the book to anybody. Friends, that is some Adventists. They said the book contains some error. The book does not really promote Saturday Sabbath, and so they are not going to recommend the book. So the question again, as a Seventh-day Adventist, will you recommend Charlie Kirk's book that promotes the Sabbath and also promotes Sunday? Let me know your answer and the reason for your answer right in the comments. This is all I had to share with you today. May God bless you for watching. See you next time.